weakness, but weakness that seeks power. We should be empowering the weak more than anything else. Kat asks a metaphysical question. What is enlightenment? Did you bring a sleeping bag? Buddhism is all about enlightenment, and it has a library so large that biblical scholars faint at the prospect of having to read it. But it is a key Buddhist insight, enlightenment. But what do they mean when they say enlightenment? Well, it means wake up. That's what it comes down to. And behind that is the assumption that most of us are mostly asleep. Now, we all know what it's like to be asleep. How many times have you found yourself pulling into the driveway and not remembering driving at all? How many of you have forgotten what you had for dinner last night? Even when we're awake, we're often pretty much asleep. Well, Henry David Thoreau famously said, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." I'm not even sure they know they're desperate, but they are quiet lives, not very much awake, and that's what we see with the herds of people that the previous person was wondering about. Why do we follow bad ideas? Well, we're kind of asleep a lot. And of course, Plato in his famous Republic has Socrates describe the state of the human creature as being in a cave where the only light we see comes from behind us and throws shadows on the wall, and therefore we think the shadows are reality. And let me add, in this world of being half asleep, Jesus, of course, in whose mouth John famously put the words, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free," tells us that we are all running through life not knowing much truth at all and acting as if we do. Of course, each of them, be it Jesus or Buddha or Henry David Thoreau, or for that matter, Plato, then tells you when you come out into the light, it will look like I'm telling you. And I'm about to tell you that anyone who tells you what the light looks like is not the light at all. They're telling you what it's like. You have to actually see the light. You cannot have it described to you. But then I have to ask a deeper question. Are we able to handle the truth, as the man says in the movie? Can we actually handle the light if we were to see it? Anyone here remember Roger Corman's 1963 movie, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes? Raymond Milan puts eye drops in his eyes, and suddenly he can see through people's clothing. Oh, wink, wink. But then he can see through their skin. Oh, ick. And at the end of the movie, he literally can see everything in the universe, and it drives him mad. Because our capacities to understand may not be equal to our capacities to perceive. We need to be asleep at least some of the time. I think we need to be awake a little more than we are. Our eyes cannot see every wavelength of light. Our ears cannot hear every frequency. Our nose cannot catch but a sliver of the aromas. What we need is not to see more or know more, but to be aware of how little we see and hear and smell and taste. As far as I'm concerned, enlightenment starts with the knowledge of how little enlightenment I have. And I read and study not to become learned about what I do not know, but to be aware of my own limitations. We are but infants in this universe. And when I think about that, the whole notion of being born again takes on a whole different meaning. Ken asks, how can we be more compassionate to those we feel who are wrong, rather than a reflecting anger and fear that motivates those we feel are wrong? He asks rhetorically, where is Ram Dass when we need him? My first confession, Ken, is I have no idea where Ram Dass is. I really don't know much about him. I went and looked him up, confessing my ignorance, as I did just a moment ago. He turns out he was an American Jewish atheist professor who worked with Timothy Leary, big surprise, who turned Hindu disciple back in the 1970s, and he is in part one of the reasons Hinduism took on some renewed value here. So he is not a Buddhist, he's more Hindu, but both Hindus and Buddhists share the idea of karma. Do you know what karma is about? Karma is just deeds. It means if you do it, you will pay. That's really what it comes down to. You do a good deed, you get a reward. You do a bad deed, you get punished. And over a period of thousands of lifetimes, you can move more and more toward nirvana or toward release. One of the ways you can influence that gradual salvation is through compassion, the capacity to feel the suffering of others. Anyone here been reading Karen Armstrong's 12 Steps Toward Compassion? I think she has it nailed. She's a former nun and an author now who believes that cultivating compassion is the one thing all religious groups can do, because all religious groups say it's important. Even when they disagree on why, they all think it's worthy of doing. We all have the capacity for compassion. In fact, we all think it's a great idea, because those who have no compassion we call sociopaths. They're diseased. Therefore, compassion should be the norm. But like a sport or a language, we can only become compassionate by learning it. We have to become compassionate by choice. You have to practice it like scales or laps. Choosing compassion means you are choosing to be more compassionate, not less, that you're choosing to ignore or suppress your capacity for cruelty or indifference, and choosing more to choose your capacities for love and caring. If there is a spiritual practice we, as religious liberals, should cultivate unambiguously, wholeheartedly, and continuously, compassion is the one I would choose, because it combines the concrete with the abstract, the moral with the spiritual, the personal with the social. We should do more about this. Because it's Father's Day, Sarah has a great question. She says, why can't parents enjoy and appreciate their kids as much as grandparents do? This does not seem fair. Sarah, it is not fair. And it's not going to change, because your job is not to enjoy your children. Your job is to rear them. Your grandparents' job is to enjoy them. That's the difference. Now, that seems unfair, and it is, but I can make this easier for you. Let me ask you this question, Sarah, and I ask it to you too. Are you a better person for being a parent? Have you become more human, more humane, more complete? I can tell you as a father that being a father and a husband has made me more of a man and more of a human being than I would have been on my own. And even if I don't get to enjoy every moment the way my parents did, I get to be a better person. I think that's a good bargain. Tyler asks actually two questions. Do you think crying is a sign of weakness or strength? And my quick answer is, weeping is a sign of humanity. Didn't Mark Twain once observe that humans are the only creatures that blush or need to? And perhaps we're the only ones who weep or need to, because it reveals our sorrow, our shame, fear, love, loss, whatever pain means a lot to us. And sometimes someone who is especially cruel will take advantage of it. And the funny part is we always shame the person who cries, not the person who takes advantage of that person. Don't cry. Back up. If someone takes advantage of it, we don't criticize them. Why is that? I cry very easily and very badly. My voice gets all clenched up and I begin to sound like I can't cope, and it's right. And yet, at those moments when I feel most ugly and helpless, people say I'm brave and strong. So maybe it's both. His second question is, when is it time to stop calculating risks and rewards and just do what is right? I want to ask, well, when do you know you're right? I'm still working on that part myself. But here's my take. Calculating whether you're going to get a risk or a reward is not the same as calculating whether you're right or wrong. You don't always get rewarded for being right, and you won't always be punished for being wrong. So it depends on what you're looking for here. We would probably do better to question what it is that matters to us, because the things that you will defend without thinking are the things that matter to you. Think, for example, of the passionate defenders of segregation a half a century ago. They believed in it heartily. They were deeply devoted to it. They were absolutely clear that it was the right thing, and it turned out to be the wrong thing. Their passion, their belief, did not make them right. And similarly today, I believe those who are passionate, devoted opponents to abortion are very, very devoted to their sense of how important it is that they are clearly honest in their feelings, but I'm not so sure they know why they are. We need more moral thinking and less calculating, more moral calculating and less personal advantage measurement. We need more contemplation of right and wrong, because passion may indicate that something feels righteous, but feeling righteous doesn't make you right.